Hello, everyone. I'm John Bone, Investor Relations Director at Reckitt, and I'd like to welcome you to this Reckitt Focus On discussion around sustainability and ESG. Our new series of Focus On sessions are all about enhancing investor education, where we want to show what's going on and how we're evolving at Reckitt beyond our quarterly reporting. Now, we last talked in detail about our sustainability ambitions and developments at an investor seminar in 2022, and clearly there's been a lot of progress to report since then. So I'm very pleased to welcome David Croft, Reckitt's Group Head of Sustainability, to share his insights.
Good to see you, John. And yeah, great opportunity to talk with the market and really share some of the stories of how we've made progress against the ambitions we set out 3-4 years ago.
So, David, with that in mind, what would you say have been the biggest areas of progress, perhaps over the last 3 years or so?
I think that there are three real areas of significant progress, and I'll talk to you about all three of them, but it's carbon, it's water, and it's more sustainable products through innovation. If I think about carbon, first of all, we have 2 science-based targets with a delivery time period to 2030. On the operational carbon reduction, we've already achieved the 2030 target. As long ago as 2023, we'd surpassed the 65% absolute carbon reduction. And we've kept that progress moving. We're now at round about 69% less carbon than 2015 through our factories, the energy that we use. And that's been a hugely exciting program to drive and see ripple across the whole of the factory environment. We're also looking much more detailed now at the wider part of our carbon footprint, Scope 3, which is the biggest chunk of our footprint by an awful long way. And we're tackling that carbon footprint in products, ingredients, in the materials we use for packaging, for example, in logistics, progressively as we get towards 2030. And we've made reasonable progress, 13% reduction already. As we come towards the 5-year mark for those science-based targets, we also have to do a review, and we'll be sharing an update with SBTi in Q4 of this year. So we may see some restatement of those targets in 2026, but fundamentally that program of decarbonisation, whether it's our factories or our products, just continues at pace. The second key area, I think, of significant progress is water. Up to 2020, we'd reduced our water footprint, our water efficiency, if you like. We'd improved it by 37%, which is great progress and meant that we tackled pretty much all the low-hanging fruit. We're really targeting areas of water stress now, driving water efficiency in those sites, and we've got 16 factories that are in water stress locations. So we drive water efficiency there. We think about how much water we can recycle, how we reuse water in many different ways, how we harvest water from the roofs to just make use of it in different ways around the factory. But we also have had to think outside of those factory gates. And so we have programs in catchment areas in places like India, where 2 sites already are certified as water positive. And what that means is through the work we do upstream, we're literally putting more water back into that catchment area than we use in our factory. And that has a huge benefit for us and the communities. A third factory in India is close, and we have similar programs in Mexico, in Pakistan, and soon coming in South Africa with our partnership with WWF. Water is our biggest single ingredient. Making certain we have the future supply secure is really critical for business resilience. And then thirdly, creating, innovating more sustainable products. Innovation is the heart of all of our brands, and it drives growth. And making certain that innovation builds in more sustainable products, which we know consumers want, is also critically important for building business resilience for the future in terms of avoiding fiscal policies, plastic taxes, for example, that we already see. We set ourselves a goal of 50% of net revenue from more sustainable products by 2030. We're now at about 35%. So we're making great progress because of the work we've done on plastics and packaging, because of the work that we've done in terms of redesigning products and changing the chemistry, reducing the chemical footprint by 24% over the last 3 or 4 years. And we have a great tool that helps us drive that change. And it's building resilience against those future fiscal policies, but it's also returning value to consumers. Vanish Oxyactin Gold is a great example of this. It gets the stains out just as effectively at 20 degrees C, which means because of that cold water catalyst, people at home don't have to have the temperature in the washing machine as high, so they're saving energy. Their clothes have longer life. Net, the impact for them is significant, and the impact because of that temperature reduction on the wider planet and carbon and climate change is also significant. That's the sort of win-win that we can try and create and help people make certain their clothes live longer. It's worth saying, though, John, that because we prioritize the things that matter most, the most material impacts that we face and where we can drive greatest impact through our company as well, certain things we've slowed down quite deliberately. So electrical energy efficiency, we haven't made the progress that we thought we would need to make back in 2020. But that's because we've been very thoughtful and pragmatic. We could invest lots of capex to be more energy efficient, and it would reduce a little bit of energy cost in terms of electricity, but it would make no difference whatsoever to our carbon footprint because we're already using 96% green electricity now. So these are the practical choices that we make day in, day out, driving the things that create greatest impact, just slowing if that impact is not as significant or important to us and the goals that we've got. That's key. That element of being pragmatic and bold where it matters is key to building business resilience. And at the heart of our sustainability ambitions, when we set them out in 2020, 2021, was how do you build business resilience, future growth opportunities, and making certain that these new externalities that we and everybody face are built into the way we run the business now and for the future to give us opportunity for the future as well.
That's really important and I think aligned with how we're moving the business forward on a number of levels. Now, interestingly, you talked about three really important topics there. And what I'd love to hear is from our recent reporting and our 2024 sustainability report, what would you call out as some of the really important statistics in there, some of the developments we've had and how those have translated to our externally validated progress?
We're committed to being transparent about our progress and the way we run the business overall. And through our sustainability reporting, all the data points that we put out, it's really clear where we're up to and the processes that sit behind that. There's a vast number of data points within there. I think it's worth looking at, for example, our progress on plastics and packaging. 12% PCR. It'll accelerate a lot in 2025 and even beyond, not just because we had a target to hit, but also because we see the way the regulatory frameworks on the use of PCR is also evolving. It also means that 80% of our packaging is now recyclable. That will continue to grow, and that also means we're reducing the amount of virgin plastic at the same time. And that's important as we start to look at how we collectively tackle a global plastics challenge. It's not something that we can do on our own, by the way, because we're dependent upon the value chain innovation, policy, how that evolves, and certainly the recycling structure. But it's really important that we work on that ourselves and with others in the future. Overall, I would say our reporting, the data disclosures that we have, it's about creating and delivering information for our stakeholders, our investors, so they can see our performance and they have confidence that we're delivering against the programs that we've laid out and we're making the right progress throughout. I think it's critical also, perhaps even more importantly, because as we embed sustainability into the business, making certain we have the right data to manage our performance is really critical. In fact, as you embed sustainability in a business, Managing that performance is part of that embedding process alongside creating tools and processes to deliver that. If you do that really well, you're managing the issue, and reporting is a fairly simple additional outcome that you've got. And I think that's the right way to look at how we frame our systems for reporting. Drive performance and then disclose on the back of it.
Now, if I switch gears a little and talk about some of the conversations we have more generally with investors around innovation and the importance of investing in R&D and having a good product cycle across our power brands. So with this in mind, how are we thinking about sustainability being integrated into that product development cycle today?
Sustainability is a core part now of that innovation cycle. Every new product development, every development of an existing range is considered through the lens of sustainability. And we have a tool that's in place that is a proxy life cycle analysis tool, in effect. And it helps us decide whether a new product is a lower carbon, water, packaging, chemical footprint than its predecessor, or a benchmark. And what that really means is that we're building resilience into that product life cycle at this innovation stage. It means we're thinking then about the cost of the product as well as the carbon impact of the product at that point of innovation. It means we can make different choices, just as effective, but lower carbon, lower packaging footprint. And that builds resilience for the long term against the fiscal policies we already see in place, plastic taxes, for example, and potentially could see in place in the future, carbon taxes on products. That's baked in to the category innovation pipeline. Our category teams, our R&D teams use the tool to really blend that environmental footprint alongside delivering the most effective brands that people would expect of any Reckitt brand around the world.
Now, if we look ahead and particularly around some of the higher growth areas of our business today, where do you see the greatest development opportunities for Reckitt in terms of being a leader in sustainability in some of these areas?
In growth markets, China, India, for example, being more sustainable, if I can use that shorthand, is really critical. For example, energy supply resilience, water supply resilience are critical in both those markets. In China, we've got factories now that have more on-site electrical generation, heat generation through solar power. They're working also to reduce liquid discharge in effluent so that we reuse as much water as possible. We have zero liquid discharge in some of our factories. And we've designed those factories with the best possible approach in terms of building design. They've got LEED product accreditation. And what that means, when you put all that together, energy supply, water utilization, water treatment, building design, they're great factories now, but they'll continue to be great factories in the future when the pressures on energy and water continue to grow. But that approach also extends to our raw materials. It's not just about our factories, it's about the raw materials that we use day in, day out. So, for example, in intimate wellness, another great significant area of growth, we've strengthened the supply of latex coming from farmers in southern Thailand, people who maybe are only farming 3 or 4 football pitches of rubber trees. And we've worked with them and the Earthworm Foundation to train them, to make them fair trade certified, which gave a farmer infrastructure that we can work with to make certain training really hits the mark. And that's led to better yield, consistent quality, a stronger supply chain for us, and stronger community economics for those farmers. That's real win-win, and that's what we like to see through our programs.
Amazing progress that we're developing there. And then if I think more broadly across some of the wider strategy and business agendas that we're working through, perhaps you could give some examples of how we're integrating sustainability as we look to build the future of Core Reckitt.
The key word for me is embedding, because sustainability can create an impact for the business and an impact through the business, but only if you embed it. It's no good if the only person who takes the agenda forward is the one person who has sustainability in their job title. We're bringing new tools into the business. So we've used AI to identify hotspots in our carbon footprint. So we really know which ingredients and which materials have the biggest impact. Raw materials and packaging materials are about 60% of our total carbon footprint. So knowing where we need to target our activity to make the greatest impact for the resource we apply is really critical. AI helped us identify that just 24 raw materials comprise 80% of the raw materials and packaging footprint. In other words, 24 raw materials, 50% of Reckitt's total footprint. That means we go to those suppliers first and foremost. We think about how we use those ingredients, and we make the greatest impact for the resource we apply. That's how we bring all of these activities into day-to-day work, whether it's supply chain, whether it's procurement, our manufacturing, our product innovation. The way we identify and use technology is then built into those tools and processes that people use day in, day out to build these externalities into the business. So we're agile, and also we can create opportunity from them.
Exactly. And I think it ties into the efficiencies that we're driving through the business today as we make sure we're ready and proof for the future. So we've talked about a lot of good things so far, but it's worth probably touching on some of the challenges that we face from a sustainability agenda and how you're looking to prioritize some of these challenges in our focus areas.
We face many challenges. We face the same challenges as pretty much every other global company. They vary, but a good example is to the work that we do on plastics. We're really acutely aware of the weak recycling infrastructure to bring plastics back into a more closed loop scheme so that they can be reused again and again and again. That's critical, I think, to increasing the amount of PCR that we can use. It's all well and good, us using recycled materials, making packaging that is recyclable. If it ultimately doesn't get recycled, then that loop never gets closed. And so while we're designing those products, we're also encouraging people and starting to work more collaboratively, I think, with recyclers, even with governments, about how that packaging infrastructure could work. But perhaps even bigger than the plastics conversation is the challenge of carbon and that raw material supply chain looking upstream. It's the biggest part of our footprint, as I said. But working with suppliers and thinking about how with them we can reduce that carbon footprint, possibly using less of a raw material but still as effective, using different raw materials, using technology to identify new origins of those raw materials, is critical to drive that. And we need to do it quickly and at scale, and everybody, I think, faces that same challenge. Scientific, technical innovation certainly helping, but collaboration of the sort that we do with the Consumer Goods Forum, for example, really is also critical to making that scale impact as quickly as we need.
So it's interesting you touched on partnerships there. I think it's a very important area, both partnerships between consumer goods manufacturers like Reckitt, but also with policymakers and charitable organisations. Perhaps you could give a little more colour on some of the successes we've had with those partnerships quite recently?
Partnerships are a critical part of the conversation, whether that's with a supplier or beyond. The solutions don't always lie inside proverbially our factory gates. So partnerships with suppliers have unlocked real opportunity. On packaging, for example, we've worked with suppliers to develop new packaging materials, paper-based packaging that replace flexible plastic, for example. Laminates that are just of one material instead of multiple materials, so you can recycle them very simply. Trigger sprays that used to have 3, 4, 5 different types of material in, now just made from one type of plastic, so all can be recycled very easily. That comes from strategic relationship with key suppliers. We have partnerships with retailers through the Consumer Goods Forum. They're our customers, but they're our partners in supply chains. And that's meant on packaging, for example, we have agreed golden design rules that the CGF helped develop, which means consistency in approach towards driving more recyclable packaging. And that means that the packaging recycling infrastructure can develop faster. That's something we all need to return plastic back into reuse as quickly, as effectively as possible, and reduce the amount of plastic that gets into the outside external environment. That CGF collaboration has also meant we're working with not just our retail partners, but with suppliers to tackle topics such as deforestation, for example, on palm oil. It means we're working day in, day out with those suppliers and our peers to tackle some of the biggest challenges that we all face in a global value chain. And they're challenges that we cannot tackle alone, unfortunately. But it isn't just about private sector collaboration. We've got fabulous partnerships with people like WWF who help really drive our performance in water and ecosystems. We have programs with WWF in the Ganges in India that support catchment area and better supply of clean water that we can then use, but so can many others, as well as strengthening aquatic biodiversity in the river. We have academic partnerships. Nature-Based Insights, it's a spin-out of the University of Oxford, help us to measure the biodiversity impacts on those latex farms and help us identify new areas to improve farming and agriculture and strengthen nature and maybe even sequester carbon that helps our overall agenda. Even in communities, partnerships are an absolutely critical part of strengthening everybody's awareness of hygiene and health and the impacts that our brands have. So brands like Dettol or Harpic, our Benega Swatch partnership, for example, in India, it's reached millions of people with a message about health and hygiene that helps them directly, but also strengthens and continues to build the market for disinfectants that people rely upon. You put those things together, it's powerful because at the heart of it is a really effective process and program and product. But it's effective because of the partnership that we create with communities, with the media, with partners in academia or education to build awareness that means people know how to activate it. Partnerships are just so critical for all of our work, I think.
Some really interesting partnerships to think about there, and we're clearly doing a lot of work with a number of third parties across great areas in our business. Now, changing gears a little again and talking about the regulatory landscape around sustainability reporting. Obviously, it continues to develop, so it'd be great just to take your perspective on how we're positioned today under the current frameworks and those we will be reporting under in the future.
Reporting on non-financial activity has been a real hot topic, particularly in Europe, but globally, if I'm honest, over the last few years. And we've continued to build and strengthen our disclosures over that time period. And that's led to performance improvement on the ratings agencies. So Sustainalytics, we're now at around 18. We were at 24. AA rating on MSCI. What that tells us is the disclosures we've got are pretty robust already. And it puts a good foundation in place for the new regulatory approach through CSRD or climate transition planning, or even in the future TNFD. We've continued to strengthen systems so we can try and automate this as effectively as possible to reduce the workload and make the process as simple as we can. I think we're well placed for CSRD. When we have to do that, the omnibus gives us another couple of years, but really full year 2027 is when we expect to be reporting on that. But we'll continue to build our reporting around it so that progression to FY27, a simple and efficient process as we can make it. But I would say that actually it comes back to reporting is an outcome of strong internal performance management. And we have that so that we can drive embedding of activity and really target the most important issues for the business on these topics. If we get that right, then we drive performance, we build resilience, and reporting is a very logical and much simpler outcome to make.
Now, just moving to the final area, and I think this is something that you're particularly passionate about, and looking at opportunities for us to develop our sustainable journey as technologies continue to evolve and develop.
Well, I think technology is a huge opportunity for us in terms of how we use data and insights and how we can develop new technology to make significant step change approaches. AI, for example, I've mentioned how it is helping us to target where the really important parts of our carbon footprint are. But you can also use it to speed up packaging design and create lightweighted packaging with the most effective structural stability and strength in a fraction of the time that it might have taken in the past. AI is helping us to do that in our innovation processes, even thinking about which ingredients you can use that has that blend of efficacy and reduced environmental footprint. If I look beyond products, inevitably new technology is strengthening already things like logistics with stronger EV performance, longer battery life, and so on. New energy solutions are coming through on a regular basis, new materials that tackle packaging challenges, new tools that measure performance, things like biodiversity in the field, with automated digital data transformation to help us understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis. We already use satellite imagery, but this is going to take on an even greater significance in the next few years. That means we can then think about how you link solutions, carbon sequestration in nature, for example, something we're developing with our latex farmers. They're starting to look at how you would use biochar to remove the need to use artificial fertilizers, reducing the carbon footprint already, but actually using biochar to sequester carbon and increase soil health and strengthen yield through soil health that helps the trees. That's how you bring these new technology ideas into practice in a way that makes a real difference. And then the last example is about how we're looking at technology to capture flue gases and then reuse the carbon within that as part of our product ingredients. It's a program we've done with peers and academic partners, but effectively it's capturing carbon from flue gases, reducing the carbon emission straight away, reusing that in terms of new surfactants that we use in disinfectants like Lysol. And it also means we're no longer needing to use palm oil as the base for those same chemical materials. That's a true win-win in terms of carbon reduction, more effective ingredient sourcing, and almost trying to create that closed loop of circularity. The more we can use technology, the more we can accelerate and create scale from those opportunities, I think.
David, that's been incredibly insightful and great to get your thoughts on all of the areas we've been developing on, and particularly going above and beyond what's just in our regular published updates. Also, I think it's been really interesting to hear about how we are integrating sustainability developments into all of our core business areas. So thank you very much for sharing your time with us today. Now, if you would like to get any more information on sustainability at Reckitt, then you can go to our website, which is www.reckitt.com/our-impact. Or, of course, you can get in touch with the investor relations team. We'll always be happy to help. So thank you very much for joining.